Morning of September 16, 1939. The sun rises pale over the soaked fields of the Bzura, where the dense air carries the metallic stench of coagulated blood and old gunpowder, while the ground vibrates with the guttural roar of approaching German tanks, like a predator sniffing out weakened prey. Polish soldiers, cornered and exhausted, feel cold sweat running down their backs under torn uniforms. Adjusting rusted rifles with trembling hands, their hearts racing, echoing the dread of an inescapable siege that tightens like an iron claw. The cutting wind brings the acrid smell of distant smoke, mixing with the muffled lament of wounded scattered across the muddy earth, evoking the palpable despair of a besieged nation on the brink of the abyss. As the Nazi invasion enters its third week, the day 16 marks the imminent collapse of the largest Polish counteroffensive, with German forces launching coordinated attacks that seal the fate of the isolated troops. Gerd von Rundstedt's forces consolidate the encirclement of the Poznan and Pomorsy armies, now trapped in a deadly pocket along the river, where the smell of sulfur from recent bombs hangs heavy, suffocating the air like a toxic mist. The soil, churned by days of fighting, clings to boots like a viscous trap, while the echo of distant explosions resonates like incessant thunder, tightening the chest in a vice of constant tension. In the heart of the Battle of the Bzura, Polish troops, led by Tadeusz Kutreba, face the end of their bold maneuver, with the German 8th and 10th armies closing the steel ring in a multi-front attack supported by the Luftwaffe. The air vibrates with the menacing hum of Stukas diving like hungry falcons, releasing bombs that tear the earth into smoking craters. The impact, shaking the body like an invisible punch that makes teeth grind. Soldiers throw themselves into water-filled ditches, feeling the humidity penetrate the skin and the bitter taste of dust and fear fill the dry mouth. While nearby grenades explode, sending hot fragments that cut the air with sharp whistles. The Wielkopolska Cavalry Brigade, under Roman Abraham, and the Podolska Cavalry Brigade, commanded by Leon Strzelecki, attempt to break the encirclement with desperate charges. The crossfire from German machine guns slices the air like sonic whips, leaving contorted bodies in grotesque positions and horses neighing in agony, their hooves sinking into the blood-soaked mud. Significant losses accumulate. Thousands of Poles fall, their moans muffled by the roar of panzer engines, while generals like Władysław Bortnowski order tactical withdrawals eastward toward Warsaw, feeling the oppressive weight of imminent defeat like a burden on aching shoulders, and the chill of doubt piercing bones like icy needles. On the northern bank of the river, units like the Armia Pomorsy take defensive positions. But the incessant bombardment transforms the terrain into a hell of craters and debris, where the smell of scorched earth mixes with that of bodies in initial decomposition. In Warsaw, the besieged capital, the encirclement intensifies like an implacable vice, with German forces advancing on the western suburbs, supported by 13 divisions and over 1,000 artillery pieces that hammer the city without mercy. The ground trembles like a wounded animal under the constant shelling of howitzers, buildings collapsing into suffocating clouds of dust that irritate the throat and burn the eyes, while the air fills with the howl of sirens like banshees announcing death. Civilians, including the vast Jewish community of nearly 400,000 souls, huddle in damp and dark basements. The air heavy with the stench of collective sweat, paralyzing fear, and the muffled sound of children's crying, feeling hearts pounding hard against ribs at the echo of shattering glass like lethal rain. The smell of charred wood, melted metal, and burned flesh impregnates the debris-clogged streets, where the sticky touch of dried blood and rubble stains the trembling hands of survivors scavenging ruins. Eyewitness accounts evoke visceral horror, families huddled in improvised shelters, the heat of nearby flames licking cracked walls, and the lament of the wounded echoing through dark alleys like a ghostly chorus. The Polish defense, under Julius Rommel, resists with fierce determination, but German air superiority makes every daytime movement a mortal risk, forcing soldiers to crawl through sticky mud, feeling the damp cold against exposed skin and the metallic taste of adrenaline in the mouth. Even darker, the day witnesses the continuation of systematic atrocities by SS and Wehrmacht units in occupied areas, like villages around Łódź, Poznan, and other central regions, where Polish and Jewish civilians are targets of summary executions, under pretexts of security and cleansing. The dry crack of rifles echoes through once peaceful streets, the fresh smell of gunpowder mixing with that of freshly dug earth in makeshift mass graves. Nobles, intellectuals, clergy, and minorities are dragged from their homes, feeling the brutal grip of gloved hands and the cold barrel of a gun against the nape, while hidden families in damp attics listen to the heavy steps of Nazi boots like a funeral bell. Paralyzing terror, freezing muscles in absolute rigidity. In reported incidents, Polish prisoners of war captured in recent combats are brutalized, their bodies left in open fields under the pale sun, evoking the raw horror of occupation that chills the blood in the veins and leaves an emptiness in the chest like an abyss. In the east, shadows of betrayal approach with greater intensity. The ceasefire effective on this day between Soviets and Japanese in Nomonhan, after months of border clashes in Mongolia, frees the Red Army from an eastern threat, allowing Stalin to secretly order the final mobilization to invade eastern Poland the next day, aligned with the secret pact with Hitler. Tense diplomacy echoes in Moscow, with telegrams between the German ambassador Schulenburg and the Foreign Office sealing coordination, while Polish forces on the border receive orders from Edward Rydz, Śmigły, to retreat without engaging potential incursions. Feeling uncertainty like a cutting wind that penetrates bones, and the smell of diplomatic tension hanging distant but impactful, like a cold mist over the eastern horizon, laden with omens of a second devastating front. Global reactions resonate ineffective and distant. In London and Paris, furious debates about aid to Poland continue in diplomatic corridors, with newspapers like The Times highlighting Polish resilience amid chaos, but without concrete actions on the Western Front, leaving the Poles isolated in the vortex of destruction, feeling the weight of Allied betrayal like an icy blade in the back, and the bitter taste of abandonment in the mouth. Empty declarations echo in government halls, while the world watches Polish agony with a mixture of horror and inertia, the international silence amplifying despair like an empty echo in a chamber of torment. As the sun sets over fields dotted with craters, inert bodies, and smoldering debris, the uncertainty of tomorrow hangs heavy like a shroud, a somber reminder that war devours lives with insatiable hunger, touching every sense in a macabre symphony of survival and loss. Collective mourning settles like an icy mist, with the distant roar of artillery promising more agony, while the Polish nation, bleeding profusely but still resilient, clings to a fleeting hope amid growing chaos, feeling the uncontrollable tremor of exhaustion in limbs and the oppressive grip of approaching darkness. To not miss the next day, subscribe, like, and comment.